Hi, guys, and welcome to the That's Where I'm At podcast. Today I have Adriana. She is the founder of Let's Get Your Shift Together. After nearly 3 decades of enduring narcissistic abuse and 4 years of dealing with severe chronic pain, she made the choice to embark on her own healing journey. Adriana's healing journey inspired her to become a life coach so she could help other people. Her goal is to empower survivors of narcissistic abuse to heal, set boundaries, and live life on their own terms. So, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Hey Laura, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, it's been great. I've been following you on Instagram, and it's just so interesting to see the things that you talk about. And of course, we have some similarities. And then also, you talk about your childhood and your mom and your relationship or lack thereof with your mom, who I think is now passed away.
Yeah,
Correct?
totally. Yeah.
And so, it's really interesting. So I'm excited to talk to you. So, start wherever you'd like to start, but really what got you into what you're doing now?
Totally. So it was actually chronic pain that got me into what I'm doing now, which sounds so weird. But
Right. Yeah, tell
yeah,
us about that.
totally, for sure. So um, I basically had really bad chronic pain from 2015 to 19. And it all started with like a wisdom tooth extraction. And then it was just like this downward spiral of insanity. And yeah, it was terrible. So basically, I got migraines, TMJ dysfunction. So, like, my jaw joint was like all out of whack. Yeah, I was doing all the things for pain relief. And then I started doing like this I'm calling it stupid now because I know how
Right,
stupid it is,
right,
jaw treatment. Yep. With like splints and braces. And like the idea was to basically rearrange my skull and then perhaps, maybe I would then stop having all these migraines and stuff like that. There was
wow,
no guarantee that it would actually help the pain. And I did everything, like you name it, I tried it. I was doing nerve block injections, Botox for migraines, all the things that you could possibly imagine, chiropractor, acupuncture,
right,
physiotherapy,
right,
everything.
right.
And then it was 2018, October, a couple months after I turned the ripe old age of 30, I got shingles in my mouth.
Oh my gosh. No, I got my shingle shot because I had chicken pox. Did you have chicken pox
Yes,
before? Okay.
yes.
It always scares me. I told my brother the other day, because we're in our 50s. I'm like, did you get your shingles shot? Because we've
Yeah,
all had chicken pox.
yeah, get your shingle shot.
Gosh, that's so scary. Okay.
Yeah,
In your
yeah. And
mouth. In your
in my mouth, yes, whilst getting my jaw realigned.
like
And
you needed more stuff happening in your mouth.
exactly, exactly. And like I couldn't get the shingles vaccine because you have to be 50 for that, right? So like
Oh,
that was just not even a thing for me.
right.
And I had shingles as well in 2011 when I was like 23, but it was on my lower back. It was horrible. But
Yeah.
in my mouth, it was just like next level,
Yeah.
like
Can't
the
even
next level
imagine.
of hell. Yeah, it was terrible. So I ended up with like, I wasn't eating, like I couldn't use my mouth for anything. Like it was just so painful. I did the antivirals, of course, but then that
Okay.
nerve pain kind of lingers. And I ended up with something called trigeminal neuralgia, which is the nerve in the side of the face that was affected by the shingles, and the rash came out in my mouth.
Hmm.
And that's nicknamed the suicide disease
Oh,
because it's that painful. So I'm the ripe old age of 30 and basically telling my husband, like, I'm going to try to make it to 40 because if I'm in already this much pain by age 30, I am terrified of aging further than this
how are
because,
you
like,
going to live? And what kind of a job did you have at this time that, like, how were you living?
yeah, so I was an office monkey. So yeah, like account manager at like a big
Right.
company and all that kind of stuff. And it was like, it was a distraction from the pain, but I was just like dying at work every day. I had all this ergonomic equipment for my carpal tunnel because I had carpal tunnel too. I had one surgery on my hand already, and I was supposed to get surgery on the other hand because, of course, when my left hand gave out, and I'm right-handed, so I don't know how it was like the left that was
Right.
first to go, but whatever.
Right.
Um, so pretty much I was using my right hand too much, and I ended up getting carpal tunnel in that hand too. So I was gonna potentially do the surgery for that. And then one day in January of 2019, I was just randomly on Facebook or Instagram, and this was when
Right.
the algorithm was starting to get pretty creepy and new
Okay.
everything
You
about my
knew
life.
what you wanted. Yes.
Yeah.
Was listening to us.
Yeah, right. So now it's like even creepier, but
Right.
I'm glad it started out back then.
Right.
And I found this ad for an app called Curable, which was marketed for people with chronic pain. So I was like,
Uh-huh.
that's weird that Facebook knows I have chronic pain, but whatever. I'm gonna buy this app. I signed up for a 1 year subscription. It said, like, I didn't even look into it. It literally just said if you have chronic pain, you need to try Curable or
Wow.
something along those lines. So
Wow.
I bought a 1 year subscription. I thought it was going to like hypnotize me into thinking that I didn't have chronic pain or something like that. Like I
Well,
really didn't know.
maybe at that point, who cares? As long as you don't
Exactly.
feel it.
Exactly. I was so desperate. Like I
Yeah.
was doing everything. Like I was going to the pain clinic like multiple times per week before work to get these nerve block injections. And it was, it would help for a bit, but then it would wear off. And I was just chasing pain relief constantly.
Yeah.
And I also had a medical marijuana card as well, but I couldn't vape it anymore because like my mouth had the shingles in it. Like it was just it was a
Gosh.
whole thing, right? So I was just desperate. And
Wow.
so I tried the app, I opened it up, and then I got extremely offended because the whole premise of it is the work of Dr. John Sarno, who basically discovered in his practice that people who have chronic pain, and he was a real doctor, like he wasn't like a
Okay.
snake oil salesman or like some woo-woo guy or anything. Like he was a
Okay.
legitimate medical doctor. He discovered that it's actually an accumulation of repressed emotions from childhood trauma that causes the pain.
Okay. And you
Yeah,
were totally offended by that?
totally offended because I knew that my mother was a narcissist,
Okay.
but I didn't think that was trauma. I was like, I don't have trauma. That's weird. I don't have repressed emotions. I'm not an emotional person.
And were you still in contact with her at this time?
Yes, we were like pretty much a mix of lowish contact.
Okay.
I did some no contact and then went back to low contact like
Yeah.
at the end of her life, of course, because I was the only next of kin, but
Right.
that's a whole other story.
Right.
But yeah, pretty much yeah,
Wow.
I was super offended and I was like, I just wasted $100 on a 1 year subscription on this app. I was just pissed off.
Oh my God.
So the next day I was still pissed off, but of course I was still in pain. So I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to try it, see what
Right.
happens.
Right.
Within my first 2 weeks of doing the emotional work, I had a 20% reduction in my pain.
Wow.
Yeah. And I had my first 5 minutes of like no pain at all. I thought I was dead. Like it was just the weirdest thing. I was like, this is how people like
Body
just,
experience. You're like, what
you
just
know,
happened?
I was like, something's wrong. I'm not feeling pain.
Right.
It was so weird. So I kept going.
Yeah.
And then within 4 months of using the app, I got my braces off. I stopped doing the jaw treatment. I was completely pain free. And I was like, I need to share about this with people because this is crazy. Like I've been suffering for so long, and people need to know about the mind body connection. So I actually started off as a pain coach, and got
Okay.
certified as a mind body fitness coach, and started, posting about that. And then I started
Okay.
sharing about my own life and how being raised by a narcissistic mother was what caused me to repress my emotions in the first place.
Okay.
And that was really starting to resonate with a lot more people.
Wow.
And here we are for almost 5 years later.
It's amazing I mean, that is, well, that is amazing. And the that you were offended, it's so funny. This is gonna come out, our episode will come out long after I'm gonna tell you about this story because it just happened. But I have a friend who somebody said something to her and she was like, and I was totally offended because I was like, if you're offended, there's something. I
Yes.
wanted to say there's something there, but I didn't. I said it's just something to consider, just something.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
I mean that is true, right? If we're being offended or it's triggering us, and that's what
Yeah,
I've been learning is if it's triggering you, don't just like brush it away or push it away. Really look at it and go, why is this triggering me? What
exactly.
is, and figure out what is it touching because we all have stuff from our past and some of it is repressed because we're trying to be keep ourselves safe. Our mind is trying to
Exactly.
keep us safe. Oh my gosh. All right. So tell me more about, well, so that was so how you started your coaching and so are you doing any pain coaching or anything like that, or has it changed into anything else?
Yeah, so it's pretty much narcissistic abuse recovery coaching, and I deal mostly with adult children of narcissists, and they have chronic pain or like mystery conditions, mystery symptoms. Like it's basically like they've been to their doctor, they've
Yeah,
done the tests, they're not dying, there's nothing nefarious going on, there's no
yeah,
like recent fractures within the last 3 months or so. And it's like we're killing two birds with one stone pretty much. I do also help people who are in relationships with narcissists as well, because they end up having symptoms too. And yeah, pretty much I do absolutely, like in my programs and stuff like that, I totally go into the mind body connection because it is the basis of the inner work. And
right,
it's basically how I healed, not just from the pain, but
right,
also from the abuse that I had been through for my entire
right.
life. And so it's basically the same approach either way if you want to heal from anything.
Yeah.
And, happy bonus, if you've got chronic pain, you're going to be able to deal with that as well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That sounds really helpful.
Thanks. I must say it's 4 years into 4.5 years into doing this, and it's just completely life changing for the
And
people
I
who do
don't
it.
know that people realize, that chronic pain or different things like that. I mean, that is because of something that we're repressing or things that happen to us, because if we're not thinking about it, then maybe it's fine, So tell me a little bit about your childhood and any relate and how maybe it affected any other relationships in your life.
Totally. So my childhood was awful. I'm just going to be straight up honest about that.
Good.
Um,
Please be honest.
yeah, like I can't sugarcoat it. It was really bad. My mother pretty much had me as a pawn in her divorce case against my father.
Yeah.
So that's why I exist. It's I mean, I've worked through that for
Okay, you
sure at
are
this
good. All
point.
right.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
all good. It's all good. So yeah, I was a manipulation tactic because
Gosh.
she needed something to hold against my father. And that whole thing was a whole shit show. I remember kind of being in the middle of everything, like traveling back and forth from Toronto to Italy because they had like a property in Italy and like the divorce, and it was just a whole shit storm. So those are my memories of Italy. um
Did you know, like, did she say something to you, like that she didn't want you, or that you just knew that's the way you were being played?
so I didn't, like, she would tell me very often that like she should have had an abortion, or like she should have never had me and I was just this huge inconvenience. And she really like brainwashed me to be against my father. So like she alienated me from him altogether. And so she would make comments like, "Oh, where's your father?" Dealing with if I had to go to the hospital for whatever
Yeah.
reason, like she'd be like, "Oh, you're," like she'd be yelling in the freaking emergency room about how my father should be here but he didn't want to have me and blah blah blah. So then I really sort of put two and two together that I'm just this huge inconvenience to my mother. I have ruined my parents' lives.
Yeah.
I'm the reason for their divorce. Like I really blamed myself for everything, because she blamed me for pretty much everything. So you only know what you know. So yeah.
Of course. And, you're too young to sit there and go, no, I'm a valuable person or whatever. I
Hmm.
mean, you're too young to do that. That's why people just don't understand the words you say, have such meaning. That's why for me, all the things I did with reactive abuse, I went back and apologized to my grown children
Yeah.
and had healing with that. And they still
Amazing.
and we don't have things anymore in this 13 months that I've been healing, but they would bring stuff up and I'd be like, yes, I'd be happy to apologize for that because,
Amazing.
I mean, you just have to be vulnerable. I don't want them to go through life with this garbage. You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
so that's why I continue with that. So,
That's amazing.
well, it really, I didn't think it was going to be a product of what happened. I just thought, we
Yeah.
got rid of the problem, quote unquote, right?
Right.
My ex, but no, it was starting to come. I'm like, no, if I was a screamy, yelly mom because I was in a lot of anger because of my abuse. And so
Exactly.
I had to apologize for that. I love them. I want to have a relationship with them
Yeah.
and I don't want them to be like, no, she's a terrible mom. So, which could
Totally.
happen, unfortunately, with
Yeah.
the campaign and all that, but it hasn't
Totally.
happened on my end. So that's why I
Oh,
continue
good.
to heal on my end.
Amazing.
So growing up with that, I'm so sorry about that. And so what did that look like for you? Did you leave the house to go to college or anything like that, to get away from the situation?
So I really wanted to, but my mom financially abused me as well. So Yeah. Yeah.
She's the whole package.
Oh yeah, she was something else. So yeah, when I went to
Hopefully we can
university,
laugh about this
yeah.
now.
Yeah, I know, right? If we
Right.
don't laugh, we go crazy, right?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, pretty much she kind of made me I was thinking of like going to a university that was out of the city or whatever, but she
Right.
pretty much forced me to go to a university that was local so that I could drive every day.
Okay.
So I was in university. I had like 2 or 3 jobs at a time just to, make money, but she was
Yeah.
taking control of the finances because we had a shared bank account and all of my paychecks were going into that. And anytime I would buy anything, she'd yell at me. So then, yeah, when I was still in university, I was bartending and making really good tips at the time. And so I would just like accumulate the cash tips that I made.
Okay.
And over a period of time, I'd give it to her to deposit at the bank. But then I got the idea one day because I was like 22-ish
Okay.
years old at this point, and I was like, hold on, I'm over the age of 18. I am legally an adult. There's nothing stopping me from walking into a bank and getting my own bank account. So I did that.
Well, except that you've been being probably manipulated to thinking that no, you shouldn't.
Exactly. Exactly.
That
Exactly. Like it had never occurred to me.
right? Of course not.
Yeah.
No, and I know that parents do that. They keep their children, their adult children are still looked at as children, right? It doesn't matter that they're adults.
Oh no,
You
doesn't
know,
matter.
unfortunately, my children have had to say to me a couple of times, "Mom, like I'm an adult and I do these things on my own." I'm like,
Yep.
"I'm sorry." It's hard. You have to
Of
find
course.
that balance of being a mom and a loving mom and not being like, "Oh, do you want some help?
Of
Can I tell
course.
you what to do?"
Of course.
But
But there's a difference between being a loving mom and, being a little bit overbearing versus just like full out sabotaging them.
well, not to mention, I can't believe well, I'm just gonna say, I can't believe that you would like, I'm gonna take all this money and and give it to her to deposit rather than did you start thinking like I should keep some of this money, I should hide it, or maybe
Yeah.
not.
So
You
that's
did.
exactly what I did. That's exactly what
Okay,
I did. So I had all these tips that I was accumulating. And at this point, I had like, over several months, like $600 worth of tips. So I was like,
yeah,
and that was a lot of money back then.
right.
So I was like, I don't want to give this to my mom. Like,
She's
I
just
want
gonna
to,
spend it or whatever she's gonna do with it. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. I was like, I need to start thinking about like saving and moving out or something because I'm in my 20s. So I went to the bank. I got a bank account and I didn't tell her about it. And so my paychecks, though, from the bar, like I would still get the paychecks plus the tips, but I let the
Okay.
paychecks go to my mom just so she wouldn't get suspicious.
Right.
And I kept the tips for myself and just kept depositing those.
Did she
And
ever
eventually, oh, she
did
found
she
out.
ever
She found out.
like
She found out.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
she found out. Oh, it gets worse. This gets worse.
All that
Yeah,
but oh, it gets worse.
it
Okay.
gets worse. So she
Jeez.
found out.
Okay.
And it was around like, yeah, I had graduated university. I started my first big girl job, like at an office,
Okay.
and I got the paychecks to go into my personal account that she didn't have
Oh
access
my
to.
God. I can't
Yeah.
believe you did that. You're an adult and you have a job
Oh,
and you're
how
keeping the
dare me?
paychecks. I can't
Yep.
I can't believe it. I can't believe
Right?
it.
Getting paid for the labor that I did. Wow.
It's amazing.
Insane. What a concept. I know. So that's pretty much when she found out that I had my own bank account. And like she would, for years, like she would yell at me about it. And so then she got really clever and started charging me for rent.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, yes.
Yeah. And it was above market rate, the rent that I was paying. So I was not
Like,
able
let's
to
move
save.
out.
Yeah. I was not able to save any money whatsoever. Like it was impossible for me to get enough money to get like first and last month's rent together. So
And
it
that was
was just,
intentional, right? That
oh,
was
of course.
intentional. Yes.
Absolutely. She didn't need the money. Yeah, she did not need the money at all. She just needed to have the control over me.
Right.
And like make sure that I never moved out. And one time I did move out. And I had some money saved up, like not a huge amount or anything, but enough for first and last month's rent. And then she ended up guilt tripping me back to go home within 2 weeks. So, and I didn't know what a narcissist was at this point. Like I
Okay.
still believed that like I was just like such a horrible person. And now I did this really bad thing to my mom by moving out, leaving her alone.
You
And
abandoned her and all
exactly,
that. Yeah.
exactly. And my dog that I had at the time, he's passed away now, unfortunately, but that dog, he was like kind of traumatized from moving. So he was barking quite a bit. And so I got a few noise complaints. So I, talked to my mom about it. And she used my dog against me to get me to move back home. So I did. I lost first and last month's rent, started paying her rent again because I thought I had to,
Yeah.
not realizing that that was not normal. And, there's a difference between, I think it's weird for a parent to charge their children rent, but like if they're trying to save up to buy a place, sure. But like this was like full out sabotage so that I would not ever be able to move out or save up or anything like that.
Well, and I think you're right. I think there's when you start looking at maybe some other manipulative tactics that
Yeah.
charging your child rent may not seem strange because there's people who do that. I don't think that's not the thing I would do either.
Hmm.
But when you add it on to all the other manipulation, then it becomes a problem that you're
Exactly.
trying to get your child to not succeed in any way.
Exactly. Exactly.
And you were, yeah, okay. It just no, it just makes me sad, but I understand. And you were feeling like you weren't necessarily feeling like you were being manipulated. You felt like I'm a bad child for
Yes.
abandoning. So, that's so interesting, isn't it? The way the narcissist will um don't want they don't want to be abandoned,
Hmm.
but they also don't want you either. Like, I mean, she
Yes.
made it clear she didn't want you, but
Exactly.
it's so crazy, right? It's all
Exactly.
part of the manipulation. It's to confuse you and make you feel like the bad person, which you
A
did.
hundred
That's why
percent.
you moved back, and that makes me sad. So you found a list about 10 signs your mom's a narcissist.
Yeah. So this was years later. Yeah. So this was 2014.
Okay.
I had just broken up with a very confusing
Oh,
person. Yeah.
okay.
Who I then realized that he was a narcissist
Oh,
because it was a very short relationship.
okay.
And
Should
it
I?
was the most confusing one that I ever had. And so that's when I started Googling. That's when I got the idea to start Googling. Like, why would a guy be so interested? And then all of a sudden, like, he's not attracted to me anymore. Like the day after we were like looking to maybe like rent a place together and he was
Yeah.
talking about marriage and all the things. Like, what is that all about? And then I stumbled upon narcissistic abuse. And then
Oh.
I realized I had a little pattern of dating narcissists. So all of my ex-boyfriends, most like except for one, but all of them were basically all narcissists. But because I was in such a mind fuck,
Yeah.
it was easier for me to blame myself for the previous relationships for ending or like, take some ownership in it at least because the reactive abuse, like I was crazy, right? Like
Right.
I
Yes.
was so manipulated by them. And so that's when I realized, like, oh shit, like, no, this has been a recurring pattern around my life. And
Yeah.
so I'm down this Google rabbit hole, you know, couple days into it. And then I find an article of like 10 signs your mother's a narcissist. And it was just like, holy shit, existential crisis.
Oh my gosh. Now, is there a difference with like a toxic parent? I guess it's the same, isn't it? A toxic parent, narcissistic parent. I guess they can have the similar traits or whatever, manipulation, things like that, right?
Yeah, I think people who are uncomfortable with the word narcissist will just use the word toxic.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like a toxic person is still abusing you and
Yeah.
not, treating you
And
properly.
well, this is something that because people say that, and some people have a problem because it's supposed to be a diagnosis. But I always say if I can use the word narcissist and then I know how to target my healing,
Mhm.
because I don't want it to be always about him. I know how to target my healing because I know why he got into a relationship right away, and I know why he lied to me, and why he did this, why he did that. So if I can use that word, and that's why to me it's
Mhm.
important to use the word if it
Exactly.
fits, because then you can really learn how to be in this world with the person if you want to be, and
Mhm.
also how to heal. That's so now
Exactly.
my healing is targeted because I don't think people understand that it's not the same kind of healing as just like
Yeah.
I broke up with somebody. Like, I didn't just leave a marriage. I've
Hmm.
been in mind games for 33 years, and I'm learning how, like, I don't even know how to function half the time. I do
Exactly.
now. I'm 13 months past, but
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of work. But the first few months, I was like, I have no
Hmm.
idea. Do I like this? Do I like that? I have no idea because
Yeah. You don't know who you are.
I haven't been allowed to make decisions on my own. I
Exactly.
did make decisions on my own, but I was told they were wrong.
Of course, of
So,
course.
so
Right. And that's the
sure,
thing.
I'm sure you felt that too.
Oh, 100%. And that's the thing. Like when people use the word narcissist, it's not the diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder, because
Right.
you have to understand they're not going to go to therapy. They're not going to think to themselves like, "Oh, I don't like how I'm treating people. I better go get diagnosed and see like what's wrong with me." No,
No, they
they're
love how they're treating
yeah,
people because they're getting everything they
yeah,
want.
exactly. They're hell bent on it. And narcissist in itself is not a diagnosis. It's
Yeah.
literally the correct word to
Okay.
describe a
Okay, great.
narcissist,
Great.
right? Because it's a very specific pattern. It's a very specific type of abuse, and that's literally the word that describes it.
Well, that's
So
it. And
yeah,
diagnosed narcissist is such an oxymoron. They're not going anywhere near getting,
exactly,
they're not going to get
exactly,
diagnosed any, they're not.
exactly.
Oh, I went because every time we went anywhere near a marriage counselor, which he wouldn't do individual
No, of
counseling because there's nothing wrong with him,
course.
but every time we did marriage counseling, they were concerned about me
Yeah.
because they were like, he's so nice, he's so charming. I'm like,
Hmm.
what the
Yep, they
hell?
they manipulate their counselors and therapists. That's why
The
like couples
last
counseling with a narcissist is the worst thing you can do.
It's the worst. At the last counselor, our last one told me he was very handsome, and what did I have to complain about?
Oh my God. Wow.
I I was and I was getting healthy at this point. I threw a full on toddler fit, like, well, you guys are gaslighting me.
Oh my God.
Can you
Yeah.
imagine as a therapist or even
Yeah.
a coach, even talking to somebody like that,
Yeah.
going, "Oh, your husband is so charming and handsome."
That's insane. Like I don't understand like these therapists
No,
that don't get it. Like I
no,
don't know
they
if it's
don't
just
get
not
it.
in the curriculum or what, but there's so much gaslighting that therapists do. And that happened to me too with my mom. I was in
Okay,
therapy and, telling the therapist how my mom was just driving me insane. And this was before I knew what narcissism was.
okay,
Right. So I was basically telling her everything that was happening. And she's like, "Oh, why don't you bring your mom in one day and we'll do a session together?" So I did. And she manipulated her. And the therapist was basically like, "Your mom's so nice. She's so sweet. Like everything's going to be okay. Just love your mother and be there for her. She needs you." And so that kept me stuck for longer than I needed to be as well.
yeah, and it's really a shame because we did marriage counseling so many times and it did nothing
No,
except make me feel crazier.
exactly.
The only time was the one time where he had this is when I was first starting to notice, and this was years ago when he was first starting to be a little too friendly with other women. And the one and I we went to counseling over that, and the counselor told him like that's not okay. And he actually, I don't know, quote unquote, stopped for a minute.
Just a minute.
Just a minute.
And then he started
No,
again.
I don't want to put him in a box, okay? I just no, he just stopped for a minute and then it went right back to
Yeah.
normal. But it I was that was the only time where we were both like, "What are you doing?" I was surprised that the therapist said that because I
Yeah.
thought for sure they would be like, "Well, you just, men are men and you just gotta let them do what." No, that's not
No.
okay. That's a problem. That's a red
Yeah.
flag. Especially when you ask people to stop, right? You're asking a behavior to stop and they continue. And this could be in any relationship. If they continue, they don't have any respect for you, any value for you. And that's why I think it's hard. People think that setting boundaries is saying, like, Adriana, don't talk to me that way. But it's not. It's saying, if you continue speaking to me that way, I'm going to leave the
Yes.
room or I'm going to leave the conversation. And as people pleasers, I think it's hard for people to,
Mhm.
and I'm a recovering people pleaser. Of course, I love people, but I also don't want to be, a doormat to people. So
Exactly.
it's learning
Exactly.
how to set healthy boundaries. Okay, so tell me more about what did you do after you found out this list about your mom?
Um,
What did you,
so before,
you ask?
interestingly, before I had that breakup, it was like maybe a couple of weeks before that breakup happened. And
Okay.
so I was still in the love bombing stage.
Okay.
For some strange reason that I will never understand, I'm going to just call it my intuition.
Okay.
Something told me, forgive your father.
Oh,
Yeah. And so I have two half brothers on my father's side from his first marriage. And so I ended up messaging one of my brothers saying, like, "Hey, can you give me our dad's email address? I know this is so random, but I
and
just
you had
wanted
no
to."
contact with him at all?
No, No, I was terrified of this man. Like I wanted nothing to do with him. I was told all these horrible things about him.
Oh,
And yeah, so it was just like classic parental alienation right there.
yes.
And my brothers knew that like I hated my father. I wanted nothing to do with him. So I can imagine just how confused my brother was getting this message from me on Facebook. Yeah. So I sent him an email just saying, hey, I still want nothing to do with you, but I forgive you for abandoning me as a child, because that's what I was told, that he abandoned me, which wasn't, it ended up not being true, but we'll get to that.
Right.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's, I should write a book at some point.
You should. Definitely.
It's just, there's so many parts to this story, but yeah, so I forgave my father because I just felt like this urge to do so. And then he replied to my email basically saying he's been waiting for this day for like his whole life, and he wanted to talk on the phone. But I was just like, no, I said what I needed to say. I don't want a relationship with you. I hope you live out the rest of your life in good health and like enjoy whatever. And then eventually he would start like sending me like Merry Christmas, Happy Birthday, stuff like that. And so it was 2015. And so I was still living at my mom's house in 2014, realizing she was a narcissist, but I kind of went back into denial for a bit. Okay. However, yeah, I figured it out with men. I found my now husband. So, I broke that cycle, thank goodness. Nice. But I was still kind of brainwashed a bit by my mom. And like, I had my dad sort of emailing me a couple times a year for that year. And then it was Christmas of 2015 where he emailed me and said, like, I want to give you a Christmas gift. I don't know you, so can I send you money? So I was thinking, oh, well, according to my mother, he never paid child support. He left us poor, that ended up being bullshit. Yeah, I know.
He really wanted you to hate him.
Yes. So I believed he never paid for child support. So I was like, okay, well, he owes me money anyway. So I'm going to say, sure. Right. So he sent me money. I was expecting like $20 or something. It was like several $100s. So I was so confused because I was like, I didn't know that like parents give their children money. I thought just children give their parents money. Like I was bamboozled. Yeah. Yeah. Like I was so fucking confused. So yeah. So I messaged him and I was like, thank you so much. That was extremely generous. I really appreciate it. You did not have to give me that much money. Like, that was like, and I thought like he was like this poor guy, like who just, had nothing to his name and like didn't pay for child support and all that kind of stuff. So I was just like so confused. And then he sent me this very cryptic message back saying, it's only a fraction of what it should have been over the years. And like he said something else that just like made it, I can't remember the exact words, but it was just very cryptic. And it made me think like, wait a minute, maybe I should listen to his side of the story. So I was like, I think we should talk. And we had scheduled to talk like January 4th, 2016. I remember the date. And still around Christmas 2015, things with my mom were just like very tense and very like crazy. And then I started kind of going back down that Google rabbit hole, like learning about narcissistic mothers again. And I was like, holy shit. And it was New Year's Day, 2016, when I came home from being out with my now husband, boyfriend at the time, and some friends for New Year's, as people do. And I came home that next morning, and we had a chair at the front entrance where we would put our jackets on because the closet door was broken for years on end, and my mother just couldn't afford to fix it. So yeah, so I put my coat on the chair as usual. And she decided that in that moment that was an issue. So she started yelling at me about it. And I was like, do you hear yourself right now? Like I was just.
Did you say that?
At that time I did. That was like the first time I kind of stood up for myself, because that's like, I was really in that rabbit hole and really like confused because like my father said something weird about like child support. So like I started to put two and two together that like maybe she's been lying to me for my entire life. So I was just like in that just very pissed off stage where I was just like, hey, like she's obviously a narcissist. This is just not normal and I need to figure something out. And yeah, she was narking out. She was in a complete psychotic rage, screaming at me about the jacket, saying like, the jacket goes in the closet. I'm like, the door is fucking broken and I'm going out again in like 10 minutes anyways. So like, you need to relax. Like, you need to calm down. Like, do you hear yourself? Do you see yourself? You're really overreacting about this. You're acting like a toddler. And then she just kept going on. And then I was like, I we all make mistakes, so this was very stupid of me to say. But I'm glad I did, because it prompted me moving out. I basically said, I'm going to record a video of you right now so that you can see yourself once you've calmed down and see how insane you're behaving. Yeah.
That went over
So,
well.
oh no, it went horribly. Yeah, yeah. She got up, she walked up to me, punched me in the shoulder. Yeah, yeah. It didn't hurt.
At least it was only the shoulder.
Yeah, right. It wasn't painful because she was like 72 at the time. So like whatever, like not the strongest person, but still, it was still like she just physically struck me. What the fuck, right? And then she like went upstairs, started crying, saying about how she wanted to kill herself and blah blah blah. And I had read that that's a manipulation tactic, so I didn't take it seriously. And I was literally like, I was very in touch with reality in that moment of like, no, she is fucking wrong here. Maybe I was wrong for saying I was going to film her, but I didn't actually film her. I was just literally trying to make her understand like, you're overreacting. And her response was to punch me in the shoulder. That's insane.
Well, and see, the thing is, you were learning about it, right? You had gotten
Yeah,
out of the denial and went back and was, okay, no, yes, this is what
yeah,
I'm dealing with. And that's why I felt like it's been so important on this healing journey to tell people, it's like these are problems. Like they're,
yeah,
and then you're not panicking that she's actually going to kill herself because it's a manipulation tactic and
exactly.
all these things. And that's why it's so good to know what we're dealing with. That's
Yes,
why, and also working with a therapist who maybe is versed on this or trauma informed or something, because it's a different animal when you're trying to deal with these people or you're even trying to heal from it. Because people are like, I had people telling me he deserves to be happy and that it's okay that he's with somebody else. And I'm like, oh, okay, like, how is
yeah.
that supposed to help me? But
Never mind all the years of abuse you went through.
yeah, exactly. Oh, yes, you're right. He deserves to be
Yeah.
happy.
Okay.
Okay. Uh,
All
sure.
right. Yeah. Murderers deserve to be happy too. All right.
Yes, exactly. I mean,
Whatever.
it's so you're that's the thing is it's like you're not dealing with a regular person
Yeah,
who's just throwing a fit.
exactly.
They're manipulating. Anyway, continue.
Exactly.
Gosh.
Yeah. So yeah, so then like that was the day I decided I need to move out.
Yeah.
So I went for a drive just to cool off. Like that's what I would do. I even had like an emergency bag in my car just in case I needed to like sleep at a hotel or something, or if things got too intense at home, or like she threatened to kick me out or whatever. And I also had like supplies for my dog as well in my car just in case. Like I was just in such survival mode. Yeah. So I
But
went for a
that's
drive.
sad. I mean,
Yeah.
that's sad. But
Yeah. It's not
people
normal.
people
Yeah.
do make plans to leave. But yes, you're right.
Yeah.
It's not normal, and these are red
Exactly.
flags.
Exactly. Yeah. So I went for a drive just to clear my mind a bit because it was winter. So I couldn't really go for a walk. So a drive it was. And that was really when I decided I am moving out. Fuck this. I'm done. I was in debt, but I decided I'm employed, so it's fine. I'm gonna just take on whatever debt I need to take for first and last month's rent, get the fuck out of this situation because this is not okay.
Yeah.
So I got home. She asked me, she was like, where the fuck have you been? And I'm like, I needed to go for a drive after you punched me in the shoulder. And she's like, then the gaslighting started. What are you talking about? That never happened. I'm like, okay. Okay.
Right, you didn't run upstairs to see if she was gonna be okay, right?
Oh, she
That
was
whole
fine.
thing.
Yeah,
Right,
she was
that whole
fine.
thing, but,
Yeah.
you're abandoning her and you're not a
Yep.
good daughter because 'cause you're not here with her and all that, and oh my gosh,
Yeah.
yeah, the gaslighting, yeah, I didn't
Yep.
what are you talking about? I didn't
Exactly. Exactly. Like she supposedly didn't punch me. So I was like, all right, cool. If you want to deny that, that's fine. But I know what happened and whatever. And then she started crying and saying, like, how could you do this to me? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, yeah, I did this to you. Sure. So I just didn't care at that point, and I started looking for a place. And then basically January 4th was the day that we went to look at my place that I moved out to, which was my last apartment, before the one I'm in now. And that was also the same day I had the phone conversation with my father.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I had to drive to like the park and
Yeah.
sit in the parking lot to talk to him, before my appointment to go view the apartment and, sign up for it and all that. And yeah, he basically told me that he didn't abandon me. And, we were talking about how she's a narcissist, and he's like, and I had empathy for him too. I'm like, I'm so sorry you had to like be married to this monster, like
Right.
what a disaster. Like with how she's treated me, I can't imagine how she treated you and what she did to you. And, it sounds like she probably like kept me away from you to manipulate you. So, I felt so bad for him.
Right.
And yeah, he basically told me that he did pay for child support. He left me a lump sum, which would have appreciated in value. And I was supposed to be entitled to whatever she was allowed to take like a couple, like $400 a month or something for my child support, for my care. At the time, like in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. And when I turned 18 in 2006, I was supposed to get whatever was left, which should have been a huge amount of money. So I was like, okay, interesting. Like I was just so confused. And yeah, he told me some other stuff that is not coming to my mind right now. But basically, like I learned that she lied to me about a lot of things, and he didn't abandon me. He did pay for child support. Oh, he also told me the other thing was that he also had shared custody of me. However, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Jeez.
yep, yep. However, I kept saying, no, I don't want to see him. And
Oh,
so he still would have been able to see me, but he would have had to get the police involved and come with like a police escort to have his visitation rights with me. But he figured I was already so traumatized
oh,
by all the horrible things that my mother was telling me about him, that if he were to show up with cops, like I
yeah.
would be even more traumatized and think
Right.
even worse things, and she would be able to spin that in such a worse way. So
Yeah.
he figured, like, I'm traumatized enough, like, this is already really bad,
Yeah,
but it's
he
going to be
knew the
even worse.
manipulation. He knew what
Yeah.
she would do and all the manipulation. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. So how was that? Was that so healing to talk to him?
Um, I wouldn't say it was healing.
Okay.
It was
Okay.
like traumatizing, if anything. And then
Okay.
like I guess it was because I didn't fully believe him.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean,
Right?
I totally get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So I ended up waiting for my mom to be out grocery shopping one day,
Okay.
and I went through her documents.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Like I had to do my
You
detective
had
work
to
at
get
this
proof.
point.
You had to
Yeah.
get proof.
I needed to know the truth. And so I found all of the documents from their divorce settlement.
Okay.
There was a lump sum for me,
Oh,
and there was not much money left by the time I turned 18. So there was like maybe $12,000 or something, which still would have been a life changing amount of money for me when I turned 18. Like it would have been something to start off my savings. I signed it off to her,
oh,
because
really?
when you're 18 and your mother tells you to sign some papers, you just sign them.
Oh my gosh. Seriously?
Yeah.
She had you sign it over.
Yes.
Oh my
Yep.
gosh.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Because
And
you
then
didn't
I
know,
found,
you trusted her.
yeah,
You
I had no idea. Like I completely trusted this woman, and it was literally my 18th birthday that I signed this document. And I do remember going to the lawyers on that day, but I didn't know why. Like,
right.
and then like I really had no idea why we were going. And
Well,
she just
and
told me to sign
really,
something.
when you're being manipulated, you really don't even want to say like, well, what is
Mhm.
this? Because
Exactly.
she wouldn't exactly allow you to have an opinion
Exactly.
or ask questions,
Exactly.
so, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
So how
Yeah. It was a bummer.
do you,
It
that's the
was shit.
nicest word I
It
can
was
think of.
pretty
That's a
bad. Yeah.
bummer. Did you ever continue a relationship with your dad, finding
Yeah.
out kind of the truth and stuff
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah. We have a relationship now. It's, it's weird because went my
Yeah.
whole life. Like I
Yeah.
was 27 when all of this happened. So,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, like he lives in Florida, so like we live in different countries, so it is what it is.
Yeah.
But we talk every now and again. It's
Yeah.
better than hating him. And, it's just sort of, it's weird. It's definitely weird, but at least I found out the truth before, he would eventually pass away. And like, that would have been a worse way to find out.
Right.
So yeah.
It's kind of good. I mean, I would guess that it's good to have that clarity that,
Yeah.
everything that she told you about him necessarily wasn't true. Doesn't mean you have to have a really close relationship,
Yeah.
but at least you have that truth in there. And so then what happened after all that with your mom, and like how did that help your
Oh
relationship?
boy. Oh boy. So yeah, so my dad decided that he was going to come visit me in Toronto after, all that, because it made sense. And I was actually willing to see him and talk to him and stuff. So I did not tell my mother. And I didn't tell my mother that I had signed on a lease that I would be moving out in March,
Okay.
right? So
Yeah.
this was January. My dad came in February, and my now husband also came with me to see him because
Okay.
like it was just I felt weird. Um and like he was there for moral support, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
And they got along really well, so that was good. It was weird, of course, but like it was nice because I found out the truth, and at least I found out before it would potentially be too late. And it was great. And then my mom, I think I ended up telling her, yeah, I told her that he came to visit, but this was like weeks later. So he was already back in the States. And
Safety of
I, yeah, I think I just wanted to sort of see, like, I don't know, I was in the mood of like stirring the pot. So this was well before my healing journey and well before, my extensive knowledge now on how that was a mistake. But, it's good stories, right? Um, so I said like something, I think my husband was taking me ring shopping, right? Like, so this was before we had gotten engaged. So I made the mistake of telling her that my boyfriend at the time, now husband, was taking me ring shopping and all that kind of stuff. And of course, she was insulting the rings that I was choosing and said it looked like costume jewelry and blah, blah, blah. And then she said something about my dad. And then I said, oh, by the way, I saw him a few weeks ago, just because I was so pissed. And she's like, oh, why did you see him? So I told her, like, he was in Toronto, and, I wanted to find out the truth, and I found out the truth. And she's like, oh, did Tristan, my now husband, meet him? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, oh, I bet Tristan hated him. I'm like, no, they actually got along really, really well. And she said, oh, well, maybe you shouldn't be marrying Tristan then. And then
Wow.
I got so pissed off by her saying that, because she obviously said that just to piss me off. So then I marched upstairs, grabbed those documents with like everything, with the trust fund that I signed off to her, the divorce papers, everything. I said, what the fuck is this? If my dad's such a bad person, tell me what the fuck
Then
this
what
is.
is all this? Yes.
Yeah, like I was just so angry. And then she didn't even say anything. She was just saying that like the accountant kept charging her fees for taking money out, but it was money she wasn't supposed to be taking out because it was
Oh,
beyond what was like for my care in the first
yes.
18 years of my life.
Right.
So she just switched the subject to that, like, conveniently. So I was like, okay, I am seeing everything that I read on Google and what I saw on YouTube. So
Amazing, isn't it?
yeah,
Like it's like they all read
textbook.
out of the same playbook.
Yeah,
It's wild to me.
yeah.
Like the brain that's why the brain is so fascinating to me. It's like, how can everyone I talk to, I'm like, this is just it's another episode of the Narcissist Show.
Yep,
Just
exactly.
have different players. Come on in.
Yep,
It's
100%.
wild. I
Yeah,
mean, it's wild to me. The
yeah,
brain is fascinating that way,
yeah,
but it helps you recover, helps you move forward, helps you
yep,
help other people.
yep.
I can
Totally.
tell because I told my kids, I'm like, this is what he's gonna do next, and then this, and then this, and they're like, okay, mom, and he did.
Yep, exactly. Exactly.
It's crazy.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. So what did she even say about all that? Did she even say, oh, well, she was saying that
Yeah,
she was just being charged a fee.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So I was like, all right, fuck this. And like I knew I was moving out soon anyways, because this was like
Yeah.
end of February, and like I think March 1st was like my move-in date. I didn't tell her about it until the day I moved out. So yeah, I got the fuck out, never looked back.
Okay. And so did you stop your relationship with her at that time?
Yes and no. So I still had a relationship with her. So I moved out in March, and then in June, my husband's grandfather had passed away. And so she stalked me at the funeral and started
Oh,
harassing me at the funeral. I ended up getting an ulcer because there's a
no.
whole story about a duvet cover, like a
Okay.
blanket. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want
So
to tell it?
I took my duvet from the house when I moved out because it was mine. I had been sleeping in it for years. I didn't have money to buy anything because I was already in debt, taking on more debt. And, finances, like I was living paycheck to paycheck and just paying off all the debt that I could and paying for rent at this point. So like it just was not in my budget to spend $100 on a new duvet.
Right.
So, I took mine, which was mine. And she all of a sudden like had an issue with me having this duvet because she was saying, oh, well, when I sell the house, it's not going to match the sheets or whatever. And I'm thinking, like, if you sell the house, like you're going to get it staged, they're going to put modern stuff. Like this duvet is from the fucking 90s. Like it's not even in style anymore. Like it's going to look
So
terrible.
you couldn't have it. That's all it
Exactly.
was. That's all it
Exactly. I just couldn't have it. So she had this whole thing where like she wanted me to get a new duvet. She was gonna give me $80 to buy a new duvet from Walmart. So I was like, okay, like it specifically had to be from there. But then I was like, I don't want a shitty Walmart duvet. Like I want a good one.
from Walmart. It
So
has to be from Walmart. Oh
it
my
had to
God.
be from Walmart. Yeah. So I bought $100 one from somewhere else and, one that I actually liked and not like a piece of shit.
Right.
And I figured, she'll just give me the $80 and call it a day. No, then that just changed everything. Yeah.
That was
That
your
just
first
changed.
mistake.
Yeah. That changed everything because I didn't buy the specific one she wanted me to buy. The deal was no longer on the table and she wanted me to still give her back my old duvet. So I threw it down my garbage chute. And then yeah, but at the funeral, at my husband's grandfather's funeral, she was literally harassing me about the duvet, and I got an ulcer that day. Yeah. 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 And so eventually, like, we had like just that very strained relationship. I didn't have the balls to go no contact with her
Okay.
because, I was her only child. She had no other family. I was the only next of kin. So I felt like I couldn't go no contact. And then I kind of did eventually go no contact, but I didn't tell her. Right. So,
Right.
um, you
Yeah, and
know,
that's the thing I don't think people understand. You don't have to make a big announcement or
exactly.
anything. And then also, don't you feel like that information wasn't as prevalent as it is today? Like
Exactly.
people talking about having no contact or low contact with their family is like I'm starting to hear that more. Maybe because I'm in healing spaces where people are like, "No, I can't be around my mom because she's so toxic." And the people saying, "Well, it's your mom. Who
Oh,
cares?"
wow. Yeah.
It's if it's like making me sick,
Yeah.
then why am I going to do it? So I think that that wasn't as prevalent. You know what I mean? Like, don't
Exactly.
you feel like you hear
A
it a lot
hundred percent.
more
Yeah.
differently?
It's definitely more out there these days.
I feel like you can give people more permission to be like,
Yes.
pretend like it's not your mom and talk about the toxic and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. So were you doing any therapy or anything like that at
Oh
that
yeah. Oh yeah. I was in therapy. It was completely useless.
time? Oh, it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
My therapist was basically like, oh, that's your mother. And
Okay.
then, yeah. And then, like, we were planning our wedding and all that kind of stuff because we had
Yeah.
gotten engaged. So, like, I felt like, so I actually did something hilarious. I had both of my parents walk me down the aisle as like a little revenge thing for both of them.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah. Like,
it's
just to
so
piss them both
evil.
off. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I
I
know.
love you. You're just so evil. I love it.
I just had to like do something, right? Like just to piss them off. But in hindsight, I just should not have invited my mother at all. But, I didn't know what to do either because if I walked by myself and like my father's at my wedding, that's going to be like people are going to be judging me, like saying, like, why, she finally has a relationship with him. Why isn't he walking her down? And then I thought if I get my mother to walk me down and not my father, it's going to be like, that's going to be weird. And then if I get my father alone to walk me down, my mom's going to get pissed off and say like, oh, I was your father growing up, blah, blah, blah. And I just didn't want to
Yeah,
have any drama. So
right.
I was like, you know what? I'm going to piss them both off. They're both walking me down. Um,
Well, and at that point, it sounds like because I totally understand that, but it sounds like you maybe weren't even in a as healed of a place as you
yeah,
are now to be able
exactly.
to say like, I
Yeah,
am walking myself down the aisle. And that's the way
exactly.
it is. And everybody just shut up about it. But you weren't
Exactly.
in that place. You were
Not
still
at
trying
all.
to make everybody happy. People who don't need you to, who don't
Exactly. I
care
was in
about your
people pleasing
happiness.
mode. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I was in therapy leading up to my wedding as well, but the therapist was literally saying, like, that's your mother, you can find a way to compromise, blah, blah, blah. So I'm thinking this is the expert. She's got a master's degree. She's been
Right.
through the therapy course. Like, I have to do what she says. So I really took that to heart. And yeah, so it kept me stuck longer, right? And I was nowhere near starting that healing journey because that I got married in 2017 and my healing journey was in 2019. So that was really when everything started to change for me. But in 2017, 18-ish, I kind of went no contact. I didn't answer her calls for the holidays. I stopped going for Christmas.
Mhm.
2016 was the last Christmas I went because she kept talking about my father and talking shit about him. And this is when I knew the truth. So I ended up like actually walking out of her house. Like I literally set a boundary and I said, like, if you keep talking about him,
Yeah.
I'm going to leave. And
Right.
then she kept talking about him. So I was like, I'm going to leave. And she kept talking about him. I'm like, I'm leaving. So we left. And I never spent another Christmas with her again. And then, yeah, I started that healing journey in 2019 and was pretty much no contact. Had to break no contact at one point because it's a long story. I needed her to take a DNA test because I found a first cousin on 23andMe. It was a whole thing. Yeah, that's another story. But
I have a friend who just found a sister
oh boy,
on
yeah,
23
exactly
and
right.
me.
Like, yeah, yeah. And like this cousin, like we
Surprise.
look like sisters. Me and this cousin literally look like sisters, and she looks exactly like my mother. So like it was really like, is it
Like,
possible that there's a mistake, right? So that was why I broke no
I
contact.
see. Okay. Yeah.
And so basically when I got her to spit in the tube, and so turns out another family member is a horrible person as well. So it's just
God.
there's just
You're
so
breaking
many.
the cycle. You are breaking the
Oh yeah.
cycle.
Oh yeah, 100%. So yeah, basically when I got her to take the DNA test, I started noticing signs of dementia in her. But this was like May of 2019. So I was already a coach. I was already, done my healing journey. I mean, the healing journey never ends, of course. So I'm still on my healing journey, but like I was like way more evolved at that point. But at that point, it was like, all right, she's definitely showing signs of dementia. So I just figured, you know what, I'm going to keep it very surface level, very low contact with her. And that's when I switched to very low contact. And, it's kind of good that I had to break that no contact because, yeah, I was going to basically call senior services on her, let the government deal with her if she needed to go into a home and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But sure enough, a year later, May of 2020, she, which was like at the beginning of the pandemic too, she
Yeah.
was driving on a highway and the police found her
Oh,
and yeah, she had a heart attack. She had a UTI. She had advanced dementia. And then like 8 weeks later, she ended up passing away. So yeah,
my goodness.
yeah, it was wild.
So, well, just touch on how did you feel? Just be honest. How did you feel hearing that? I mean, I'm sure you ran the gamut of emotions, or maybe you didn't. I don't know you. So I'm just, I know that I get it. I think I would have run the gamut of emotions, been like sad and then also like glad. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a roller coaster. So at first, like when the hospital first contacted me, because she had my phone number in her wallet. So
Oh, okay.
it was weird because I had gotten like some missed calls from her around midnight, but like I didn't answer because I was like, this doesn't make sense.
Right.
And she left me a really weird voicemail that day too. So I was like, all right, she's lost her shit. I'm gonna call senior services. It
And
was
especially with the UTI, people don't realize how crazy it
yeah,
makes. Like their
yeah.
minds is all because my mom went through that before she passed away. They'd be like, "She has a UTI," and I'm like, "Really?" Like it, and you
Yeah.
don't realize it. Yeah, it's a
Yeah, it
common
affects
thing. It
seniors'
seems.
brains so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so I saw like her name pop up on my phone at like midnight, but she didn't leave a voicemail. So I was like, whatever. That was the police contacting me, but hey, I
Oh,
figured it out the next day. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't know.
So yeah, it wasn't immediately obvious that she was at the end of her life the first 2 weeks that she was in the hospital. But because she took my key away when I moved out
Yeah.
in front of my friends who were helping me like move a table,
She could assert her dominance.
yes, exactly. I didn't have keys. So I had to like get a locksmith, break into the house, find the documents, find the will, find the power of attorney, find everything. And also, my uncle had been suing her for a decade because when my grandmother died, she tried to bamboozle him out of his share of the inheritance from the house. So I had to clean up that whole legal mess. So I was extremely stressed out from that. But ultimately, I was relieved when she did finally pass away. When the doctor told me 2 weeks into her being at the hospital. So I refused to speak to her at all. Like I only communicated with the hospital staff because I just didn't, like, I had nothing to say to her. Like I was like, whatever, like, what am I going to say? Exactly.
Yeah, you've done
Right.
it all.
Exactly. And so then when the doctor said like, so she had a massive heart attack, it turned out. And basically she stopped eating. And so because of that, she wasn't taking her heart medication. And because of that, she wasn't able to get surgery, because if she did the surgery, she would have died on the operating table. And so therefore she's going to die anyways. So I was like thrilled, and then a wave of panic. Right when they said end of life, I was like, but like obviously didn't express that, but internally I was like, oh my god, I'm going to be free of this woman finally. And then also like then the wave of panic of like, okay, like now there's like all the legal stuff I have to deal with, because like there's that lawsuit and my name is on stuff. So like because my uncle could have gone after me and all that kind of stuff. So I had to contact a lawyer and all that kind of stuff, and everything got sorted out. It's all good. But that was just a whole shit show. I even spoke to my lawyer like about a year ago, and because this happened in like 2020 into 2021, and he was like, that was a train wreck. Like that was the most train wreck case I've ever dealt with.
You don't even want to deal with that, like she's passed away, you have those emotions, and then like, okay, now I have to deal with all this garbage, and it's
selling the house, the estate.
Well, but you have to,
I had to, like, I legally was obligated to do all this, but it's fine. And basically I went through every emotion you can imagine. Once she was declared end of life, they did allow me to visit the hospital, because it was during COVID as well, right? So like you couldn't go to the hospital. So I decided to go, just to see if like I'd get any closure, or just see like what state she was in, and like also to prove it to myself that she was actually going to die. And so she was like, it was not her on that deathbed. Like when I first went to see her, she was so nice. She was like, oh, am I going home now? Are you here to take me home? And then she thought like I was her. Like it was just the weirdest thing. And I had a few like phone conversations with her on the phone, and she said like, oh, you, Tristan, and the dog are going to move to my house. We're going to play the piano. We're going to eat bagels with smoked salmon and cream cheese. And I was like, who is this? Like, but that was like her broken record thing. That was the Alzheimer's, the dementia, and all that kind of stuff speaking. It was not her. And then they ended up moving her to a hospice. And so she was in a different city also, because of where she was found on the highway. Like she was not in Toronto. She was like about 40 minutes away. And then the hospice that they moved her to was even farther away. So it was just like an adventure. So I did go to visit her, and then she like lost the ability to talk. Like it took a solid 8 weeks for her to finally pass away. Like I don't understand. Like she had no food. It was crazy. It was weird. It was weird, but it worked out because I had to like sort out so many legal things and like get house insurance, and like I had to get that all sorted out while she was still alive because of how the power of attorney was written up. So like it worked out. But there was one time on her deathbed when it was myself and like the hospice nurse in the room, and she was wearing all her jewelry. Like she wore all her jewelry to the hospital and she wouldn't take it off. And so at this point, like she was just so out of it, so incapacitated. So I was like, okay, let me try to, like the nurse said, like, if you want to try to take her rings off, like go for it. Like she wore all 3 of her engagement rings. She was engaged 3 times. And she kept them, of course. Okay. So I tried to take it off, and then she actually had the energy to move her hand away from me, and she gave me the death glare on her deathbed. And then the nurse was like, whoa, is that what you grew up with your whole life? I'm like, yep. And she's like, I am so sorry. I'm like, thank you.
Gosh.
Like that was the first medical professional that was actually validating about the whole situation. And she was actually super. And so then she eventually passed away. I was relieved when she passed away. Like, I was just super, just like a sense of freedom kind of. Still stressed out because of course, like the legal stuff was still going on. That took a couple of months to clear up, but luckily I was able to get all of the ducks that needed to be in a row, because she had stopped paying for house insurance because of her dementia as well, right? So it's like it was a whole shit show. Like that's another podcast episode probably.
Oh, I'm telling
But
you, and
yeah,
that's the thing, and it's I'm sure it's going to be shocking for people to just be like, yes, I was relieved. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But the thing is that she was your abuser. And so, of course,
exactly.
that's how you felt. And you can say whatever you want. Those are your feelings and those are the way those are the ways that you felt. And
Yeah,
I want people to like really think of to themselves, like, what are my true feelings for these people in my
yeah,
life? Because you don't have to hate them, but you also don't have to love them, and you have to figure out where you are on this spectrum of things. And just because you have family doesn't mean you have to allow them to treat you the way they treat you.
exactly.
So it's something really to consider, that's for
Exactly.
sure.
Yeah,
So tell everyone where they can reach you and if they want to work with you as a coach.
totally. Totally. And I will add, I was
Yeah.
both relieved and in a state of grief and shock and all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
But like the underlying thing was the relief. So I did go through the roller
well,
coaster. So it doesn't mean that when your abuser dies, you're going to be relieved and happy. You are
yeah.
going to go through that roller coaster, but it's okay to feel that relief.
And that was the thing for me too. When I walked out of my marriage, I thought, okay, the problem, right? The quote
Yeah.
unquote problem is gone.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I get handed grief and I get handed confusion and all.
Yeah.
I was,
Exactly.
oh, I thought I was just like, la la la, I'm gonna heal. I really was
Exactly.
so ignorant. And then I was like,
Yeah.
what's happening? And so that's why it's important because, and when you were talking about therapy too and how it was useless, that's why it's important, of like my example of my useless marriage counseling. You have to find the right person because I'm in therapy and I love her and
Amazing.
but she's also trauma informed. She helps me and she really guides me and helps me think of things and all and work on things. So it's not a waste of my time, but you have to look for those people who are not a waste of time. And it's hard because you may not know it's a waste of time. But I do have a friend who said like the second time she went back to therapy, the therapist didn't know why she was there. That's a red flag. People get up and leave and go, I'm not paying you $100 for the session or whatever, even if it's free with insurance. Just get up and leave the room and go find a different therapist. There's more than one out there. So
Exactly.
it's important. If it's important for your well-being, and I think it is. I mean, therapy doesn't have to be the only thing. I believe in lots of other things. There's holistic therapy, there's coaching, there's lots of things. I've done it all.
Yep.
I I do. I love all modalities, so you'll
Yeah.
find me doing lots of things because it's
Exactly.
good for our brain, and then also, of course, the exercise and all that. Right? Just so many things to do to heal our brain after we've been in abusive relationships. But well, thank you for telling me that. So tell everybody how they can get a hold of you, where they can find you, and we'll also put all the information in the show notes.
Awesome. Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or YouTube under Let's Get Your Shift Together. Shift with an F, all
Right?
one word. And yeah, you can work with me as well. I have a low cost $27 per month membership that you can find at the link in my bio. And if you are ready to make a bigger investment in your healing journey, I do offer a 12-week group coaching program called Bulletproof. It's the ultimate blueprint to becoming bulletproof after narcissistic abuse. It takes you through literally everything. It is all the support in the world. And you can find the application form at the link in my bio as well.
That's so awesome. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story and sharing your healing and laughing with me because I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. This was such a great conversation.
I really appreciate it. And if you guys, liked her story and this anything resonated with you, please go to social media and post on the social media posts that we'll have about this, and reach out to her on Instagram and stuff because all her videos are always, I think they're funny and informative. So, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. We'll see you guys next time. Bye. Okay, and I didn't tell you, so you guys can cut this off now. Okay, so hold on. Now I can stop the recording. Hold on. Okay.